The fluorescent lights of Denver International Airport cast their harsh glow across the bustling terminal as 78-year-old Master Sergeant William Bill Thompson, United States Army, retired, carefully adjusted his dress blue uniform for the third time that morning. Every ribbon, every medal, every crease had to be perfect. This wasn't just any day, and this wasn't just any mission. Today, Bill was serving as an honor guard escort for fallen soldier Private First Class David Martinez, a 22-year-old who had made the ultimate sacrifice for his country in Afghanistan. Bill's weathered hands, marked by decades of service and sacrifice, trembled slightly as he checked his watch. The flight carrying David's remains was scheduled to arrive at Gate B-24 in 30 minutes, and Bill had arrived 2 hours early to ensure everything would proceed with the dignity and respect that every fallen hero deserved. At 78, Bill could have easily declined this volunteer assignment with the Honor Guard Association, but for him, there was no greater privilege than ensuring that America's fallen warriors received the homecoming they had earned with their lives. The old soldier's mind drifted back to his own service, spanning 3 decades and 2 wars. He had enlisted at 18, fresh out of high school in small-town Nebraska, driven by a sense of duty that his father, a World War II veteran, had instilled in him from childhood. Bill had served in Vietnam, where he had lost too many friends and learned the true cost of freedom. Later, he had served in the Gulf War, where he had commanded young soldiers not much older than David Martinez. Now, in his retirement, he had found his final mission, ensuring that no fallen soldier ever came home alone. The Honor Guard Association was a volunteer organization of military veterans who provided escort services for fallen service members being transported to their final resting places. It was a solemn duty that required precision, dignity, and an unwavering commitment to honoring those who had given everything for their country. Bill had been performing these escorts for 5 years, and each one affected him deeply. Every fallen soldier reminded him of the friends he had lost, the battles he had survived, and the responsibility he carried to ensure their sacrifice was never forgotten. As Bill walked through the airport terminal, his uniform drew respectful nods from travelers and airport staff. Most people recognized the significance of his presence, the dress blues, the honor guard insignia, the solemn purpose written across his weathered face. Children pointed and asked their parents questions about the soldier, providing teachable moments about service and sacrifice. Business travelers paused their phone calls to offer quiet words of thanks. For Bill, these interactions were reminders that most Americans still understood and appreciated the cost of their freedom. The logistics of escorting fallen soldiers were complex and required coordination between multiple agencies. The Department of Defense handled the transportation, airlines provided special protocols for the transfer, and airports facilitated the dignified movement of remains. Honor Guard escorts like Bill served as the human element in this process, ensuring that every fallen warrior was treated with the respect and ceremony they deserved. It was a responsibility that Bill took more seriously than anything he had ever done in his long life. Private First Class David Martinez had been killed by an improvised explosive device while on patrol in Kandahar province. He was survived by his parents, Maria and Carlos Martinez, who would be waiting at the arrival gate to receive their son's remains. Bill had spoken with them the night before, offering his condolences and explaining the escort process. The conversation had been heartbreaking, 2 parents trying to comprehend the incomprehensible loss of their child, while also expressing gratitude that their son would not be coming home alone. As Bill approached the gate area, he noticed increased security activity, and several airport staff members engaged in what appeared to be an intense discussion. His military instincts, honed by decades of service, immediately sensed that something was wrong. The gate agent, a young woman who looked to be in her 20s, was speaking animatedly with a TSA supervisor and what appeared to be an airport security manager. "Excuse me," Bill said, approaching the group with the measured stride that had carried him through countless military formations. "I'm Master Sergeant Thompson with the Honor Guard Association. I'm here to escort Private First Class Martinez." "Is there a problem?" The gate agent, whose name tag identified her as Jessica, looked up at Bill with a mixture of confusion and irritation. "Yes, actually, there is a problem," she said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who was accustomed to enforcing airline policies without question. "We've received word that you're planning some kind of ceremony or demonstration at the gate, and that's not permitted without proper authorization." Bill felt a cold knot forming in his stomach. "I'm not planning a demonstration," he said carefully. "I'm here to provide honor guard escort for a fallen soldier. This is an official military function that has been coordinated with your airline and the airport authority." "Well, we don't have any record of that," Jessica replied, consulting her computer screen. "And frankly, we can't have unauthorized military activities in the terminal. It makes other passengers nervous, especially in today's security environment." Nditio, the TSA supervisor, a middle-aged man named Robert, stepped forward. "Sir, I'm going to need to see some identification and documentation for this alleged escort duty," he said, his tone suggesting that he suspected Bill of some kind of deception. Bill reached into his jacket and produced his military ID, his Honor Guard Association credentials, and the official documentation for David Martinez's escort. As he handed over the papers, he noticed that a small crowd of passengers had begun to gather, drawn by the obvious tension of the situation. "These documents appear to be in order," Robert said after examining them, "but we still need to verify this with our superiors. In the meantime, I'm going to have to ask you to step away from the gate area." "Step away?" Bill repeated, his voice rising slightly despite his efforts to remain calm. "Son, I have been escorting fallen soldiers for 5 years. I have never had a problem with any airline or airport. Private First Class Martinez is scheduled to arrive in 20 minutes, and his parents are waiting to receive their son's remains. I will not step away." Jessica crossed her arms, her expression hardening. "Sir, you need to understand that we have security protocols to follow. We can't just take your word that this is legitimate. For all we know, you could be some kind of imposter trying to cause a disturbance." The suggestion that he might be an imposter hit Bill like a physical blow. In his 78 years, his integrity had never been questioned. His military service, his character, his commitment to honoring fallen soldiers, these were the defining elements of his identity. To have a young airport employee suggest that he might be lying about his purpose was almost incomprehensible. "Young lady," Bill said, his voice now carrying the authority of 3 decades of military command, "I have served this country for 30 years. I have buried more friends than you have probably made in your entire life. I am here to ensure that a 22-year-old hero receives the dignity and respect he earned by giving his life for your freedom. I am not moving." The confrontation was beginning to attract more attention. Passengers were stopping to watch, some pulling out their phones to record the interaction. Airport security officers were approaching, and Bill could see that the situation was escalating beyond anyone's control. "Sir," said the security manager, a woman in her 40s named Patricia, "I understand your position, but we have procedures we must follow. If you don't comply with our request to step away from the gate area, we'll have to call airport police." Bill looked around at the faces surrounding him, some sympathetic, some curious, some clearly uncomfortable with the confrontation they were witnessing. He thought about David Martinez, lying in the cargo hold of an aircraft that would be arriving in just minutes. He thought about Maria and Carlos Martinez, who were probably already at the airport, preparing to receive their son's remains. He thought about every fallen soldier he had ever escorted, and every family he had helped through the most difficult moment of their lives. "Ma'am," Bill said quietly, "you can call whoever you want. But I am not leaving this gate. I made a promise to a fallen soldier and his family, and I intend to keep it." As if summoned by his words, airport police officers began arriving at the gate area. The situation that had begun as a simple misunderstanding was rapidly becoming a confrontation that would test everyone's understanding of duty, honor, and the price of freedom. In the distance, Bill could hear the announcement that Flight 1247 from Dover Air Force Base was beginning its final approach. Private First Class David Martinez was coming home, and Bill Thompson was determined to be there to meet him, regardless of the consequences. The tension at Gate B-24 had reached a breaking point as 3 airport police officers approached the confrontation between Master Sergeant Bill Thompson and the airport staff. The lead officer, Sergeant Mike Rodriguez, was a veteran himself, having served 2 tours in Iraq before joining the Denver Police Department. As he assessed the situation, his trained eye immediately recognized the significance of Bill's uniform and the gravity of what was unfolding. "What seems to be the problem here?" Sergeant Rodriguez asked, his voice calm but authoritative as he positioned himself between Bill and the increasingly agitated airport staff. Jessica, the gate agent, immediately began explaining her version of events. "This man is claiming to be some kind of military escort, but we don't have proper authorization for any ceremony at this gate. He's refusing to move when we've asked him to step away for security reasons." Sergeant Rodriguez looked at Bill, taking in the perfectly pressed uniform, the rows of ribbons that told the story of a lifetime of service, and the quiet dignity that radiated from the elderly veteran. "Sir, can you explain your purpose here today?" Bill straightened to his full height, his military bearing evident despite his 78 years. "Sergeant Rodriguez," he said, reading the officer's name tag, "I am Master Sergeant William Thompson, United States Army, retired. I am here as a volunteer honor guard escort for Private First Class David Martinez, who gave his life in service to our country in Afghanistan. His remains are aboard Flight 1247, which is scheduled to arrive in approximately 10 minutes. As Bill spoke, Sergeant Rodriguez noticed something that the airport staff had missed. A small group of people had gathered near the gate's waiting area, an older Hispanic couple, clearly distraught, accompanied by what appeared to be family members and a military chaplain. These were obviously the Martinez family, waiting to receive their son's remains. "Do you have documentation for this escort duty?" Sergeant Rodriguez asked, though his tone suggested he already believed Bill's explanation. Bill handed over his credentials, which Sergeant Rodriguez examined carefully. As a veteran himself, he understood the significance of honor guard escorts and the sacred duty they represented. He also recognized that the airport staff, while following their protocols, were interfering with a military function that deserved the highest respect. "These documents are completely legitimate," Sergeant Rodriguez announced to the group. "Master Sergeant Thompson is here on official honor guard business." Patricia, the security manager, stepped forward. "That may be true, but we still don't have proper advance notification of this activity. Our security protocols require—" "Your security protocols," interrupted a new voice, "should include respect for our military and their families." Everyone turned to see who had spoken. It was Dr. Sarah Chen, a trauma surgeon at Denver General Hospital, who was traveling to a medical conference. She had been watching the confrontation unfold and had become increasingly disturbed by what she was witnessing. "I've been listening to this conversation," Dr. Chen continued, "and I'm appalled. This man is here to honor a fallen soldier, and you're treating him like a security threat. Have we really become so paranoid that we can't recognize genuine service and sacrifice when it's standing right in front of us?" Her words seemed to break a dam, and other passengers began speaking up. A businessman named Tom Walsh, who had been quietly observing, stepped forward. "My son is deployed in Afghanistan right now," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "If something happens to him, I would want someone like this gentleman to be there when he comes home." An elderly woman named Margaret Foster, traveling to visit her grandchildren, added her voice to the growing chorus of support. "I lost my husband in Vietnam," she said. "He came home in a box, and there was no one there to honor him. This young man deserves better." The crowd of passengers was growing, and their sentiment was clearly on Bill's side. Social media posts were beginning to appear as people shared videos and photos of the confrontation with hashtags like "Honor our fallen" and "Respect our veterans" trending locally. Meanwhile, the Martinez family had noticed the commotion and approached to see what was happening. Maria Martinez, David's mother, was a small woman in her 50s whose eyes showed the devastating grief of a parent who had lost a child. When she saw Bill in his dress uniform, she immediately understood who he was. "Are you the soldier who's going to escort my David?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Bill turned to face her, and his expression softened with compassion. "Yes, ma'am. I'm Master Sergeant Thompson. I spoke with you yesterday evening." Maria Martinez began to cry, and her husband Carlos put his arm around her shoulders. "Thank you," Carlos said to Bill. "Thank you for being here for our son." The sight of the grieving parents had a profound effect on everyone present. Even Jessica, the gate agent who had started the confrontation, seemed to realize that she was interfering with something much more important than airline protocols. Sergeant Rodriguez made a decision. "Ma'am," he said to Patricia, "I'm going to recommend that you allow Master Sergeant Thompson to perform his escort duties. This is a legitimate military function, and these families deserve our respect and support." But Patricia was not ready to back down. "I understand the emotional aspect of this situation," she said, "but I have a responsibility to follow security procedures. I cannot authorize unauthorized activities in the terminal." It was at that moment that a new voice joined the conversation. "Actually, you can." Everyone turned to see Colonel James Harrison, United States Air Force, approaching the group. Colonel Harrison was the commanding officer of the Air Force Honor Guard unit, stationed at nearby Buckley Air Force Base, and he had been at the airport on unrelated business when he heard about the confrontation. "Colonel Harrison," Bill said, snapping to attention despite the circumstances. "At ease, Master Sergeant," Colonel Harrison replied. "I've been monitoring this situation, and I want to make something very clear to everyone here." He turned to address the airport staff directly. "The escort of fallen service members is not just a courtesy. It's a sacred duty that has been performed by our military for generations. Master Sergeant Thompson is here as part of an official program that has been coordinated with this airport and this airline." Colonel Harrison produced his own documentation, including letters of agreement between the military and Denver International Airport regarding Honor Guard escorts. "These agreements have been in place for years," he explained. "The fact that your staff is not aware of them suggests a serious breakdown in communication, but it does not invalidate Master Sergeant Thompson's mission." The arrival of a full colonel in the Air Force had an immediate effect on the airport staff. Patricia and her colleagues realized that they were no longer dealing with a single elderly veteran, but with an official military presence that carried significant authority. "Furthermore," Colonel Harrison continued, "I want everyone here to understand what Master Sergeant Thompson represents. He is a decorated veteran who has chosen to spend his retirement years ensuring that no fallen soldier comes home alone. He receives no payment for this service. He does it because he understands the sacred bond between those who serve and those who have made the ultimate sacrifice." As Colonel Harrison spoke, the announcement came over the airport's public address system. "Flight 1247 from Dover Air Force Base is now arriving at Gate B-24. The moment everyone had been preparing for had arrived. Private First Class David Martinez was home." Bill looked at the Martinez family, then at the airport staff, and finally at Colonel Harrison. "Sir," he said, "with your permission, I'd like to perform my duties." Colonel Harrison nodded solemnly. "Master Sergeant Thompson, you have not only my permission, but my profound respect. Honor Guard, attention." As Bill moved toward the gate to begin the escort ceremony, something unexpected happened. The passengers in the terminal began to stand. One by one, then in groups, travelers throughout the gate area rose to their feet in a spontaneous show of respect for the fallen soldier who was coming home. The confrontation that had begun with suspicion and bureaucratic inflexibility was transforming into something beautiful, a moment when an entire community came together to honor a young man who had given his life for their freedom. As Flight 1247 taxied toward Gate B24, the atmosphere in the terminal had completely transformed. What had begun as a confrontational standoff between airport staff and an elderly veteran had evolved into something profound and moving, a spontaneous demonstration of respect and gratitude that would be remembered by everyone present for the rest of their lives. Master Sergeant Bill Thompson stood at attention near the gate, his 78-year-old frame rigid with military precision, despite the emotional weight of the moment. Beside him, Colonel Harrison had assumed his position as the senior military officer present, while the Martinez family waited nearby, their grief palpable but tempered by the knowledge that their son was being honored by his fellow service members and grateful citizens. The airport staff, led by Patricia, the security manager, had stepped back to allow the ceremony to proceed. The confrontation that had threatened to derail David Martinez's homecoming had been resolved, but not without leaving everyone involved with a deeper understanding of the sacred nature of military service and sacrifice. Jessica, the gate agent who had initially challenged Bill's presence, approached him hesitantly. "Master Sergeant Thompson," she said, her voice quiet and filled with remorse, "I owe you an apology. I didn't understand what you were here to do, and I'm sorry for the way I treated you." Bill turned to look at the young woman, seeing in her face the genuine regret of someone who had learned an important lesson. "Miss," he said gently, "you were doing your job as you understood it. But I hope today has helped you understand that sometimes there are things more important than procedures and protocols." "It has," Jessica replied. "I promise you, this will never happen again. We'll make sure our staff understands the Honor Guard program and the importance of what you do." As the aircraft came to a complete stop at the gate, the terminal fell silent. Passengers throughout the area had remained standing, creating a corridor of respect that extended from the gate to the baggage claim area where the transfer ceremony would take place. Many people were recording the moment on their phones, but they did so quietly and respectfully, understanding that they were witnessing something sacred. Bill checked his watch and nodded to Colonel Harrison. "Sir, it's time." The process of transferring fallen service members from aircraft to ground transportation was carefully choreographed to ensure maximum dignity and respect. Bill had performed this ceremony dozens of times, but each one affected him deeply. Today felt especially significant, not just because of the confrontation that had preceded it, but because of the way the entire airport community had come together to honor David Martinez. As the aircraft door opened, the flight crew emerged first, their expressions solemn and respectful. The captain, a former Navy pilot named Robert Stevens, approached Bill and Colonel Harrison. "Gentlemen," Captain Stevens said, "it has been our honor to bring Private First Class Martinez home. His family should know that he was treated with the utmost respect throughout his journey." Bill nodded his appreciation. "Thank you, Captain. That means more than you know." The ground crew had positioned a special transfer vehicle at the aircraft, and the Honor Guard ceremony began. Bill and Colonel Harrison, joined by 2 additional Honor Guard members who had arrived from Buckley Air Force Base, formed a ceremonial escort as David Martinez's flag-draped casket was carefully removed from the aircraft. The sight of the casket, covered by the American flag and carried by military honor guards, had a profound effect on everyone in the terminal. The silence was complete, except for the quiet sobs of David's mother and the whispered prayers of passengers who understood they were witnessing the ultimate sacrifice of military service. As the procession moved through the terminal, something remarkable happened. The corridor of standing passengers extended far beyond the gate area. Word of the ceremony had spread throughout the airport, and travelers from other gates had come to pay their respects. Airport employees had left their posts to stand at attention. Even TSA agents and security personnel had formed an honor line. Dr. Sarah Chen, who had spoken up during the earlier confrontation, found herself standing next to Tom Walsh, the businessman whose son was deployed in Afghanistan. Both were crying openly as they watched the ceremony unfold. "This is what America should be," Dr. Chen whispered. "This is who we are when we remember what really matters." Tom Walsh nodded, unable to speak as he thought about his own son and the possibility that he might someday be in the Martinez family's position. As the procession reached the baggage claim area, Bill noticed that the crowd had grown even larger. Airport workers, passengers, and even people from outside the terminal had gathered to honor David Martinez. Local news crews had arrived, drawn by social media posts about the confrontation and subsequent ceremony. The transfer ceremony at baggage claim was brief but deeply moving. Colonel Harrison spoke about David's service and sacrifice, while Bill presented the Martinez family with a folded flag and a certificate of appreciation from the Honor Guard Association. Maria Martinez clutched the flag to her chest, her tears flowing freely as she thanked Bill for ensuring that her son had not come home alone. "Master Sergeant Thompson," she said, "you didn't know my David, but you honored him like he was your own son. How can we ever thank you for that?" Bill's own eyes were wet with tears as he responded, "Ma'am, it was my privilege. Your son died protecting the freedom that we all enjoy. The least I could do was make sure he received the homecoming he earned." As the ceremony concluded and the Martinez family prepared to accompany their son's remains to the funeral home, the crowd began to disperse. But the impact of what had happened would linger long after the last passenger had returned to their gate. Patricia, the security manager, approached Bill one final time. "Master Sergeant Thompson," she said, "I want you to know that we're going to completely revise our protocols regarding military ceremonies. What happened today should never have happened, and I take full responsibility for that." "I appreciate that," Bill replied, "but I also want you to know that what happened here today, the way this community came together to honor a fallen soldier, that's the America that David Martinez died protecting. In a way, his sacrifice brought out the best in all of us." Colonel Harrison, who had been observing the interactions between Bill and the airport staff, stepped forward. "Master Sergeant Thompson," he said, "I've been in the military for 25 years, and I've rarely seen anyone handle a difficult situation with more grace and dignity than you showed today. The Air Force would be honored to have you work with our Honor Guard program on a more formal basis." Bill smiled, the first genuine smile he had shown all day. "Colonel, I'd be honored to serve in any way I can. These young men and women deserve nothing less than our very best." Ekem. As Bill finally prepared to leave the airport, he was approached by dozens of passengers and airport employees who wanted to thank him for his service and for standing up for what was right. Many shared their own stories of military service or family members who had served. Others simply wanted to express their gratitude for the reminder of what true patriotism looked like. The confrontation that had begun with suspicion and bureaucratic inflexibility had ended with a powerful demonstration of American values at their finest. Social media posts about the incident had gone viral, with millions of people sharing videos and photos of the ceremony. The hashtag #HonorOurFallen had become a rallying cry for supporting military families and veterans. But for Bill Thompson, the real victory was simpler and more personal. He had kept his promise to David Martinez and his family. He had ensured that a young hero had received the homecoming he deserved, and in doing so, he had reminded an entire community of the sacred bond between those who serve and those who are served. As Bill walked through the airport terminal one final time, still in his dress blue uniform, he carried himself with the quiet pride of a mission accomplished. At 78 years old, he had proven once again that age could not diminish the power of honor, duty, and unwavering commitment to one's fellow service members. The airport staff who had challenged him that morning now understood that they had encountered something rare and precious, a man whose entire life had been dedicated to service and who would never stop fighting for the dignity and respect that America's heroes deserved. Private First Class David Martinez had come home, escorted by a brother-in-arms who understood that some duties transcend rank, age, and circumstance. And in that homecoming, everyone present had been reminded of the true meaning of honor, sacrifice, and the unbreakable bonds that unite those who serve in defense of freedom. The end disclaimer. This story is entirely fictional and created for entertainment purposes only. All characters, events, situations, and circumstances are products of imagination and do not represent real people, living or deceased, or actual events. Any resemblance to reality is purely coincidental.